The first time I met Dana Whitmore, she held my hand just a second too long, smiled like we were already friends, and said, "We take care of our own here, Mr. Carter." 16 months later, I'm standing barefoot in my backyard at 6:12 a.m., staring at wet concrete curing on my property like a fresh scar, and her contractor is whistling while he smooths it out, like it's the most normal thing in the world. I didn't move for a full 10 seconds, just listening to that little TSSSS sound concrete makes when it's still breathing, and watching my lilac bushes disappear under a gray slab that definitely wasn't supposed to be on my side of the fence. My name's Miles Carter. Most people call me Miles. I spent 40 years as a building inspector and plans examiner, which is a fancy way of saying I was the guy who ruined your day if your tiny little remodel didn't match the permit. I lived by two things: lines on paper and the truth on the ground. When my wife passed, the house felt like it was echoing on purpose, so I sold it, downsized, and moved to a lakeside community called Pine Hollow Shores. Pretty lawns, tidy mailboxes, retirees who waved with their whole hand, and a homeowners association that promised peace and predictability. That was the sales pitch anyway. The HOA president was Dana, late 60s, always dressed like she was about to cut a ribbon somewhere, hair sprayed into an unbreakable helmet, lips the exact color of polite judgment. She ran meetings like a courtroom and smiled like a pastor. Folks loved her because she kept things nice. She could quote bylaws like scripture, and people ate it up because property values are the closest thing America has to a religion. I kept my head down, paid my dues, planted tomatoes, tried to be the invisible neighbor who never gives anyone a reason to knock. For a while, it worked. Then one Monday, I hear the rumble of equipment right behind my yard, the beep 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 of a skid steer, the thump of lumber, the whole soundtrack of trouble. Dana's lot backed up to mine, separated by an old chain-link fence and a strip of land that was mine, technically, but nobody ever fussed with it because it was just grass and bushes. I walk out with my coffee expecting maybe a shed or a new deck. What I see is stakes, string lines, and a crew setting forms for a foundation, and the forms are not just near the property line. They're casually lounging several feet onto my side like they pay rent. I wave down the foreman, a big guy in a neon vest, and I go, "Hey, boss, quick question. You got a survey?" He squints at me like I'm asking him to do algebra. "We're good," he says. "Approved." Approved by who? I'm thinking the weather. I go inside, open my safe, pull out my survey and deed like they're old friends. Then I come back with a tape measure and a level of calm I didn't actually feel. I find the pin, hook the tape, pull it tight along the line, and there it is. 12 feet. Not 1 foot. Not a hoopsie. 12 full feet of my land, swallowed. I walk around to Dana's patio where she's sitting under an umbrella with a glass of iced tea like she's on vacation inside her own power. I say, "Dana, your foundation is on my property." She doesn't even look at the paper. She sips. She smiles. "Miles," she says, soft as butter, "don't be dramatic. We're improving the neighborhood." I unroll the survey on her table and tap the boundary line. "This isn't a vibe," I say. "This is a legal document." And this is where she finally leans in, not to read it, but to push it away with two manicured fingers like I set a dead fish on her table. "Paperwork is so rigid," she says. "The board discussed it. That corner of your lot was awkward. We agreed a small realignment makes everything cleaner." I blink. "You can't vote my land into your yard." She tilts her head, still smiling, and says, "We can do what's best for the community." Then her smile tightens just a hair, and she adds, "Besides, it's already in motion." That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. This was a test. She wanted to see if I'd fold, if I'd be the quiet widower who just sighs and lets the world take what it wants because fighting sounds exhausting. I went home and wrote a formal complaint like I used to write correction notices at work: calm, clean, painfully specific. I attached a certified survey copy, sent it by certified mail to the HOA, demanded a stop work order and a response within 10 business days. 7 days later, I get a letter on heavy, fancy paper that basically says, "We reviewed your complaint and found it to be without merit." Then they cite some bizarre clause about minor boundary adjustments for community enhancement. It's signed by every board member. All 5. A wall of signatures, and Dana holding the pen. 2 days after that, the harassment starts. A photo of my trash can at the curb. I put it out at 6:57 for a 7 o'clock pickup. Violation. $25 fine. Next week, my garden hose isn't properly stored. 50. Then my porch light is too bright. Then my wind chimes, the ones my wife picked out, are suddenly an auditory disturbance. $100. Every letter is polite on the surface, but it reads like someone is smiling while they shove your face underwater. My neighbor, a guy named Cliff who used to talk to me about fishing, stops looking me in the eye. People who used to wave suddenly remember something inside their house they have to do urgently. And while all that's happening, Dana's structure goes up. Not a little shed. A tall, fancy 2-story boat workshop, even though none of us have boats big enough to need it, and it's looming over my yard like a concrete middle finger. I'm sitting at my kitchen table one night staring at the pile of violations, the total creeping up, and I hear the nail guns next door, pop, 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 like punctuation. That's when it hits me, clear as day. I'm trying to fight a bully using the bully's rulebook. And I used to be a building inspector. I know how this ends if you don't stop it early. So I do the thing I didn't want to do in my retirement. I hire an attorney. I didn't pick a lawyer the way people pick a plumber, scrolling until someone has 5 stars and a nice headshot. I went looking for someone who specifically enjoys punching up. That's how I found Jade Rivera. Her office was above a small bookstore downtown. Nothing flashy, just clean, bright, and busy. Jade was maybe mid-30s, sharp eyes, quick voice, the kind of person who listens like she's already assembling your story into ammunition. I lay everything out, the survey, the deed, the HOA letter, the fines, photos of the slab, receipts for every payment I made under protest. Jade doesn't gasp or clutch pearls. She just nods slowly and says, "Classic." I go, "So we sue over the property line?" And she gives me this half smile like I'm adorable. "If we sue just for land," she says, "they'll drag it out. They want you tired, broke, and quiet. We don't play their game." She taps my survey once, then the stack of fines, and says, "We're going after the pattern." Her plan wasn't just to demand they stop. Her plan was to force them into daylight. She files for an injunction to halt construction on disputed land, and at the same time, she petitions the court for discovery. Not just my situation, but board minutes, executive session notes, financial statements, vendor contracts, email threads, texts, all of it, 5 years back. When I ask if that's too much, she says, "If they're clean, they'll hand it over. If they're dirty, they'll scream." Either way, we learn something. The HOA's attorney calls it a fishing expedition, calls it harassment. That's rich, coming from the people fining me for a hose. Jade answers every motion like she's swatting flies. We go to a hearing. The HOA lawyer shows up in a shiny suit with a voice like a commercial. Jade shows up with a binder so thick it could stop a small bullet. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who looks like she's had to babysit grown men for a living, flips through the evidence, pauses at the survey, pauses at the fine letters, then looks at their lawyer and says, "Either your clients are astonishingly incompetent, or they're deliberately targeting him." I'm leaning toward the second. Discovery is granted. Produce the documents. That moment didn't feel like victory fireworks. It felt like the first clean breath after being underwater. A week later, they try to bury us in paper. Boxes. A hard drive. Thousands of pages of meeting minutes about mailbox paint and lawn height and holiday wreath sizes. It's mind-numbing, on purpose. But I spent 4 decades finding the one wrong measurement in a sea of drawings. Jade and I camp out in her office, fueled by stale coffee and spite, and slowly, the story starts to show itself. We find a line item in the HOA budget, Shoreline Beautification Initiative, Phase 1, $120,000. Phase 2 the next year, $165,000. Phase 3, $98,000. The descriptions are vague, but the checks aren't. Every chunk of money goes to the same vendor, Whitmore Outdoor Solutions. Whitmore, as in Dana Whitmore. Jade pulls up the state business registry. Owner, Trent Whitmore. Jade raises an eyebrow. A quick look at social media and there's Dana at a family cookout with a guy she calls my cousin Trent, hugging her like they just won the lottery. Then we find something even better. There was no bidding process. No other vendor proposals. Just board approval, rubber stamped. Every time Dana championed a project. If you've ever wondered how small-town corruption works, it's like that. Nobody wears a ski mask. They wear a name tag. We start cross-referencing spending with meeting notes. Landscaping that never happened. Invoices for erosion control with no corresponding work orders. And buried in the records are two other minor boundary adjustments from prior years, both benefiting Dana's friends on the board, and both times the neighbor who lost land moved out within a year. We track one down, a retired teacher living out of state. She tells me, voice shaking, they find us every week until we couldn't sleep. They told neighbors we were trash. We sold at a loss just to escape. Same playbook, same smile, same slow squeeze. Now we've got a pattern, and we've got money. But Jade wants the smoking gun, the sentence that proves intent. She finds it at 1:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. She texts me, get here. Don't call. I drive over half awake and walk into her office, and she just swivels her laptop toward me. On the screen is a group message thread between board members, dated 3 days after I filed my complaint. Dana writes, Carter is becoming a problem. The workshop can't be delayed. Start enforcement now. Be creative, trash, paint, noise, yard, anything. Make it so unpleasant he either shuts up or sells. We need to remind people who runs this community. I read it twice, and the second time I feel my stomach drop. Because it wasn't just power tripping. It was strategy. It was a plan to break me. Jade sits back, eyes hard, and says, now we're not negotiating. Now we're ending them. Here's the part nobody tells you about fighting back. You don't just battle the villain. You battle the crowd that liked the villain because the villain made life easy for them. Dana's power wasn't her gavel. It was the neighborhood's belief that rules equal safety, and that anyone who challenges the rules must be the problem. Jade understood that. So instead of filing quietly and letting Dana spin her story for months, Jade picked the stage Dana cared about most, the annual HOA meeting, the one night a year the clubhouse fills up and everyone pretends they're involved. The room is packed. Folding chairs, burnt coffee, forced smiles. Dana sits up front in a cream suit like she's running for office. Board members beside her nodding along like dashboard toys. I sit in the back and feel the room pushing me away with body language. People whisper. People look through me. Dana taps her little gavel, runs through budgets and committees. Then she glances toward me like she's tossing a bone to a dog. We have open comments, she says sweetly. And I see Mr. Carter is here. Miles, perhaps you'd like to share your concerns with your neighbors. It's a trap. She wants me to sound bitter. She wants me alone. I don't stand. Jade stands. Calm, confident, like she belongs wherever she's standing. Good evening, she says. My name is Jade Rivera. I represent Mr. Carter. You can feel the oxygen change in the room when someone says represent. Dana's smile slips, just a flicker, but it's there. Jade walks to the front carrying a small projector like it's a lunchbox. We'll be brief, she says, and sets it up facing the screen behind the board. The first slide is my survey with the boundary highlighted. Then an aerial photo showing the foundation sitting 12 feet onto my lot. Jade doesn't yell. She doesn't perform. She just states it like weather. This is Mr. Carter's land, built on without consent. Dana grabs the microphone and tries to laugh it off. This is a private matter. Jade looks at her, then back at the room. It became public when your dues paid for it. Next slide, a list of payments from HOA accounts to Whitmore Outdoor Solutions. Totals highlighted. Over $350,000 across 3 years. The room starts murmuring, like a beehive waking up. Jade keeps going. No competitive bids. No disclosures. Contracts approved by this board. Next slide. Invoices with vague descriptions and suspicious amounts. Next, photos showing areas that were supposedly landscaped, untouched. Then sworn statements from former residents describing harassment and forced sales. You can see faces changing. Confusion turning into anger. Anger turning into that special kind of embarrassment people feel when they realize they defended the wrong person. Dana tries to interrupt, voice sharp now. These are lies. Jade nods once like she expected that. Let's read Dana's words then. Final slide. The group message thread, 10 feet tall on a white screen. Dana telling the board to be creative and make my life miserable until I sell. The room goes dead quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. A man in the front row stands up, shaking, and says, Dana, did you write that? Dana opens her mouth and nothing comes out. Another board member looks like he might throw up. Someone else starts shouting. Chairs scrape. People stand. The board tries to speak over the crowd, but the spell is broken. Dana isn't a guardian anymore. She's just a person who got caught. Jade packs up the projector like she's closing a laptop after sending an email. Work done. The lawsuit filed the next morning isn't a fight. It's paperwork for a surrender. The board resigns. The HOA's insurance, under heavy pressure, covers my legal fees and damages for harassment. Dana and the involved members are held personally responsible for repaying what was funneled through those contracts. The settlement requires the structure to be removed and my property restored at Dana's expense. A separate referral goes to the county for fraud review. I can't tell you how satisfying it is to watch a foundation get jackhammered out of your yard after months of being told you're dramatic. I'll admit something I'm not proud of. I stood there with a cup of coffee and smiled when the first crack ran through that slab. Neighbors showed up too. Not all, but enough. Some apologized. Some couldn't look me in the eye. One guy who avoided me for months handed me a bottle of water and said, "I'm sorry, man." I bought her act. We laid fresh soil, replanted the bushes, reseeded grass, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something other than tension in my chest. Relief. But here's where the story doesn't tie up with a perfect bow, and if you've ever lived in a neighborhood like this, you already know why. A few weeks later, an interim board holds an open meeting. They ask me to join. I say no, not because I'm above it, but because I've seen what that chair does to people who like being listened to. I offer to help rewrite the architectural guidelines instead, make them about safety and fairness, not control and punishment. Most people clap. Most people want to reset. But not everyone. There are still a handful of neighbors who whisper that I took it too far, that I ruined her life, that Dana meant well, that we should forgive and move on. And I'll be honest, that part messed with my head more than the fines did. Because what does it say about us? That someone can steal land, weaponize rules, and siphon money, and some folks will still defend them as long as the lawns stay neat. So I'll leave you with the question I still chew on when I sit on my porch and hear those wind chimes again. Not as a violation, but as music. If someone maintains order by crushing whoever challenges them, is that really order, or is it just fear with better landscaping? And if you've ever lived under a petty tyrant with a smile, tell me this in the comments. Would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace? Or would you have done what I did and lit the whole thing up, even if it made you the villain for a while? Drop your story below. I read them all. And if you want more real lifestyle battles like this, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who thinks HOA drama is harmless, because sometimes it starts with a trash can and ends with a courtroom.